Hi, everyone. It's Bob Ost. It's Friday. It's October 14th. Is that correct? It's October 14th. And this is our 200, good Lord. Oh my God. 128th consecutive TRU community gathering. This is something we do on Fridays at 5 o'clock here in New York. We do it virtually so that people even in Australia can be with us, and we have some here today. We did this as a response to COVID. I've been running a company that did almost all live programming. It wasn't almost all live, it was all live programming for many, many years. We're 29 years old, by the way. Those of you who don't know us, we've been around for a while. And when shutdown hit, I didn't know what to do. And I had some people whisper something about Zoom. So we did this as a response to COVID and shutdown, April 17th, 2020, a date that I always remember. And it gave us an opportunity to get together in a room like this, in a Zoom room. People that were isolated were able to actually come together and meet each other and talk about what they were doing, what they were up to. By the way, if you're out there in YouTube or podcast land and you want to be part of us, we welcome you. You can always just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. And we'd be happy to send you a Zoom invitation every week, and you can be part of the room and you can ask questions and be part of what we do. So conversations have sort of evolved away from Zoom, but we're coming back to it today. They've evolved away from Zoom because we've been going into live performance, and we've had interesting conversations about the struggles of actually reopening. We are having mixed success in terms of theater coming back. We certainly are making every possible human effort we can to get theater back up and running. The only thing that is kind of a problem are the resistance of audiences to still come in and be part of the live experience. But more and more people are coming in, and we do have shows that are running on Broadway that are making $3 million a week. So Music Man's not really having much of a problem with it. But it's become competitive, and it's become hard for a lot of shows to make a go of it. Pulitzer Prize winner A Strange Loop just announced that it's going to be closing in January. It's a tough business, guys. It's really a tough business, and COVID is making it tougher. But we all are moving forward because we're artists, we're theater lovers. We believe in what we do. We believe in theater. We believe in the importance and the impact of theater, especially now in a world where we see a lot of conflict. A lot of people are yelling at each other. I'd like to think that art is a way of getting people to talk to each other without yelling at each other. So we do what we do for many reasons. And it's not just to run for a year and make money. A lot of people know that it's not just about that for us. We do this because we have passion and we have beliefs, and we would like to see the world heal. I think our country's a little broken right now. But that's just me. Maybe other people see something different. So here we are trying to talk about other things, and somehow or other we're drawn right back to COVID and Zoom and virtual. So today's conversation is going to be with who I'm proud to say is the technical consultant for Theater Resources Unlimited, Tamra Pica, who has helped us make some of our programs actually possible in virtual and on Zoom. So we're going to talk about Zoom again. So I'm going to bring Tamra into the room and say hi, Tamra. Haven't talked to you in at least 5 minutes. So we're going to talk about how Zoom has figured out what was hard and wrong and fixed things along the way. 2.5 years ago, when we first were starting Zoom, it was different than it is now. You know this better than I do because you're the person that makes all the problems go away that we're trying to have when we do these workshops and things. You've helped us actually create a virtual writer producer speed date, which I never thought was possible. So bless you for that. And what I thought was completely an impossible dream was to do the annual audition event virtually. Let's start with your background. Let everybody know who you are. There are people in the room who know you, but there are going to be people on YouTube and in the podcast world who don't know who you are. So tell them a little bit.
Okay, we'll try to do that. I'm Tamra Pica. I'm a producer and a casting director. I do both theater and television. I've been doing theater for about 33 years. Started out as a stage manager and kind of worked my way up. And then in television, I've worked in television behind the scenes, mostly in development of writers and of projects for about 25 years. So when we went into COVID, we kind of mixed my background between TV and film and theater into kind of a new way.
I just want to let you know, you're every now and then you're yeah, that's right. A little bit right more on the mic.
All right, well, let's see if that works better.
Oh my God, yes.
I just adjust.
Yeah, you adjust quickly. So I didn't come to you right away because I didn't know that I could 2.5 years ago. I had other people holding my hands and telling me how to use Zoom. But did you work with us on the?
So here's how I was brought into it. I was brought into it with John Lant, who's my producing partner. We've worked together for about 30 years in different ways. He came to me and he's like, yeah, so we're going to do this on, we're going to try to move this to Zoom and we're going to do it like this. And I was like, yeah, but Zoom doesn't work that way.
Was that speed date by any chance?
It was the first speed date. Yeah.
It was the first speed date.
The first speed date. So I said, it doesn't really work that way. And it barely worked the way that we did it.
Oh, just for those of you who weren't there, the first time we did the speed date virtually, there's two groups of 11, and one group's supposed to pitch at 4, and the other group's supposed to pitch at 5:30. Group 1 was still pitching at 7.
Right.
And what we had to do is we had to reschedule everybody for group 2 for the following week.
Yeah.
So tell us, what was the problem and how did we solve it?
So the problem was some of it was the thing about that speed date, which is so fascinating, is for everything that didn't work, what you couldn't see behind the scenes was how we rerouted the things that could work. The main issue with speed date at that exact moment was that Zoom and Chrome did not speak together. That means anyone who logged in with a PC or a Chromebook or logged in through Chrome could not use a breakout room. There was a known problem that we didn't know at the time, and our whole system is based on breakout rooms. So one of the things that has helped us has been Zoom's own kind of revising of how that system works. Essentially, a breakout room is a separate meeting. So it's really much more complicated. It seems so easy for us. We just open breakout rooms and we just go there. If we open 11 breakout rooms, we're actually opening kind of protocols for 11 different meetings, and behind the scenes, it does all kinds of things. So in that first one that we did, we actually physically couldn't get people into breakout rooms. And then it made everything kind of crazy. So over the years, that problem has resolved itself, but it's one of the reasons that we still do tech checks.
Over the years, Tamra, it wasn't over the years. It was like in a day. You figured it out in a day.
Well, we went back and we tech checked people and got them off of those devices, and then we also used the front room separately. So how we were moving people around, how Zoom said we could move people around, and then how we were doing it, it wasn't working. Like Zoom I have to say, I didn't know anything about Zoom like anyone else. So, I was we were all kind of just figuring out what it could do. Anyone who's tried to do anything on Zoom, when you look at their documentation, it's not always easy to figure out what exactly it means. and it's not always easy to get to an actual person, especially in the beginning. They were less concerned about their breakout rooms from the beginning because their biggest concern in 2020, in March of 2020, was security issues. Zoom was never kind of meant to do the things that we're doing with it. And currently what Zoom is able to do is way beyond the things that we do with it now, which is kind of exciting. You can broadcast live, broadcast controlled around the world using Zoom in ways that we can't even imagine, but that within the next probably 6 months to a year will be above broadcast quality. So there's so much that we can do with it. But at that point, we were kind of racing against what we wanted to do with it to what Zoom was repairing and when they were repairing. So every single time that we do something, there becomes a better way of doing it. Even the last event that we did, the audition event, 2 weeks after we did that event, Zoom dropped an update that would have made that event better for us.
Can you explain what happened, what they did? What was our challenge and what was their solution?
So some of the challenges that we have are using iPhones in spaces. And so there's some more stability in iPhones in how our main thing with the audition event is the same thing we're all still dealing with. How do you deal with singing in a Zoom space? And so we're very, very close. I've seen some really cool technology that's come out that dropped that latency almost down to zero, but it's still there. So one of the things you have to do when you sing is you have to go into original sound, and the buttons for original sound. What original sound is, one of the things Zoom has done, which many of you have benefited from, and you don't even know it. But one of the main things Zoom has done in terms of audio is they have taken control of your audio, which sounds very terrible, except that it's wonderful. 2 years, when we came in 2020, it was exhausting to be in a Zoom meeting. It was absolutely crazy. You could hear people's kids in the background. You could hear sirens and all kinds of tapping on computers. They actually have made their noise gate that they have put onto their system by controlling your audio for you has made most meetings incredibly pleasant without you even realizing it. But you can't sing with that. The way that Zoom works is that they take the human voice and they put it on a continuum, and they say, if you're too high or you're too low, we're not going to recognize that as the human voice, and we're going to block it out. So you can have kind of noise gate settings that are kind of low or kind of high. Most of you are on pretty high noise gate settings, which means I can't hear your kids in the background. I can't hear the police down the street. I can't hear any of those things. That makes a Zoom meeting much more pleasant than it ever was when we started. But you can't sing. So you have to go back and say, Zoom, I want to take that audio back. I want to be the one in control of it. And you use something called original sound. You have to set some things up, which we did with every single actor individually the week before. And then right before the actor goes in, they have to press a thing on their screen that selects that. That selection has actually changed. So it has made it a little bit easier for people to understand what it is and how they're using it. So that would have helped us for sure. And then just some of the stability issues. And there's continuing to drop new things. It seems like every time I have a problem, they fix it about 2 weeks after I have that problem.
Can you give a couple of examples?
Well, things that have popped up that have been hugely beneficial to us are things like choosing your own breakout room. So we've used those in some events where people can go and select their own breakout room. It used to be that I could just bring you into a breakout room and it would have to be one person. I couldn't have multiple people doing it. The difference between last year's audition event and this year's audition event, one key thing that was hugely helpful in our running of the event is that a year ago, only one person could move people in and out of rooms. And even though it kind of said a co-host could do it, they couldn't do it simultaneously. So this setup for the audition event had one person, my tech person, in the main room, putting them into a backstage area, breakout room. And then the my stage manager in the room would take people off the stage and bring them back into that backstage area, which would trigger that backstage stage manager to move the next person in. So that sounds like, oh, well, that seems so wonderful. Last year, we had to have actors moving themselves in and out of rooms. So things like that, little tiny things have made it so much simpler. And we're using Zoom in the most vanilla way. Like we've pushed it to what it can do without much more. But, Bob and I have talked about this, several times with different people. I know there's the trying to find people and list and pin them and do, isolate them and get them on stage. That actually is a solvable problem if you use other software. So there's software called Zoom OSC and Zoom ISO.
So how does that work? How do you integrate that with your Zoom account? Do you have to pay for it? I guess you have to buy it.
So there's other things like Zoom ISO 2 just released, and I would be pretending if I could tell you that I'm an expert at it, because I am learning it now with a bunch of other smarter people than me learning how to do it. But I can tell you a little bit about Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC because they were created by a company called Liminal. Guys who graduated in 2020, and they're super smart. They were theater computer majors, and they took Zoom OSC is basically you log into Zoom OSC and Zoom listens to all of the commands, and Zoom ISO is a little bit, they work together with something like Isadora. Many of us use Isadora already. We use Isadora in Spaces to do lighting design. We do projections with Isadora. And so you can actually use that software in conjunction with these others to control things in Zoom. So the use case for that is as far and wide as you can imagine, which is the hardest part. For how we would use it, for example, would be Zoom ISO will isolate every single person in the in your gallery view, for example, and you could pin them in Zoom ISO and bring them on stage and isolate their video and bring it on, on stage. You could, for example, look at people who have their hands raised and say, I want this person to be available on stage so we can see them. So we have a lot more control over what we can do. We are not using any of that at the moment, but hopefully some of those techniques we will be able to use so the theater case scenario for that, if you were doing a stage reading, for example, right now we still are at a point where actors have to control when they turn their video on and off. With something like Zoom ISO, you actually would not have to do that. I can control an awful lot of someone's system.
So basically what you're suggesting is that the reason it simplifies things is it means that there's one person who's the tech person who's going to be managing it. So this is like the tech / stage manager person is going to be able to control who comes in and who goes off, and we don't have to worry about an actor turning on his camera, turning off his camera.
Right. So you can actually use a Stream Deck and just press a button and preset everybody into however you want. So
you can also do presets. You can do presets.
I can do presets. What I could do is I could put like Bob is going to be on the right, Tamra's going to be on the left, and someone else is going to be there.
Major, like in terms of the readings, that's like a big problem that we all have.
Absolutely.
I've been doing weekly, well, every other week I've been doing readings of a play of mine with a cast, and I always tell people to put your camera on in the order in which you're coming on. And that way I know that the first person on is going to be on the left side of my screen, and the second person that comes in is going to be on the right side of the screen. And that gives them a clue of which way they should be looking so that they look like they're talking to each other. So it's and then of course it doesn't work, but it's supposed to. That's
the baseline of the easiest things we can do with it.
I'm saying that's what I'm doing without the other. So you're saying that this will solve that, because I'll be able to have somebody in control of where the people are going to be on screen.
In theory, with the right software and hardware combination, you can control everything. I can have someone in Australia controlling the sound of the event while someone else is controlling all of the video of the event. I could change people's backdrops. I could do lots of things with that. The questions become like, is it worth it? Right. So that's why some of, when we do things on our events, we look and we go, we can do all of these things, but it's not worth it if I'm the only tech person who has the equipment and who knows how to do it, because if something happens to me, then our event falls apart. We have to kind of think through, like, what do I want it to do? Same way that you do theater projects. What do you want it to do? What do you have available to you? And what does the audience expect and what do they need? So a lot of what I do in our events is manage expectations and tell people this is how it's going to be. All of our events have, I do afterwards a room for improvement list of things where I think, okay, here's some things I can do with it. What are the best possible ways of implementing that? And, what do I need to do that? And does it matter? Because some things it doesn't matter and other things it does. But the capabilities of what Zoom has to offer and mixing it with other softwares is kind of infinite. So like something like this where you're broadcasting, there's some little things we could do that make that broadcast even just stronger and, bump it up just a little bit.
So we're talking about how TRU has used Zoom in terms of our programs, specifically the speed date and the audition event. I just wanted to throw in something that a lot of people already know, which was when we started doing our first virtual benefit, which was 2021, February of 2021. I wasn't very adept at Zoom, but I had even Senhold who was helping me with some of the tech, and I don't know why I didn't have you helping me, Tamra.
You did because we produced the after party, and that actually
that's what it was.
Was and is well, that was the first time we were able to use self-selected breakout rooms, and so we've produced that part of that event.
So I want to actually underline that for everybody. When we did our event, one of my concerns was that I wanted to somehow or other simulate a live experience for the audience that was out in the virtual world. And I also wanted to find a reason for them to attend the live stream of when we were recording it and be there with us the night that we're doing it. So there had to be content that was only available that night. And the way I solved that was by having an after party, which was not in the same place as the event itself. That we actually broke off into another Zoom account. I guess it was yours, into your Zoom account, and people were able to actually go and meet each other. Just in terms of finances, the ticket price was a little higher for people that were able to come to the after party and go through the Zoom rooms and meet all of the casts and all of the actors and all of the writers. So the other thing that we did, or that I think the thing that I did, because I started with the premise, I begged all of my producers and directors and writers, think outside the talking head. I didn't say anything but talking heads, but I kept saying, can we go beyond talking heads? So one of the things that I think everybody may know by now, but if you don't, I'll just say it. There are ways of doing Zoom and virtual things live that had limitations. If you record it all and go into post-production and edit things, you can make miracles happen. You can do absolutely amazing things in post-production. So for our benefit, we had everybody think in terms of film. It wasn't just a reading on Zoom. It was really a filmed piece. And I don't know, is any of that any easier now with Zoom's new techniques?
So you can start thinking in terms of live events. What I'm talking about with Zoom OSC, with Isadora, and with Zoom ISO, those technically could produce live productions. Singing is still problematic because we just are dealing with so many different things. The things that have not changed in Zoom is everything is still dependent on everyone's personal hookup. It's still dependent on their personal sound and their personal audio and video capabilities. So some of those things, it becomes more risky for something that, like, what if one of your actors did get bumped offline and they don't have a backup? So it would have the same issues of a live production with maybe a less easy fix. So some things are better if they're pre-taped and presented, but that doesn't mean they have to be that way. The question becomes, do you really have the money and time to tech in the way that you would tech a show to be able to use this software in a way that works. So as more and more people are learning how to use it and are kind of pushing the limits, and I've fallen into the deep hole of the people who are doing that kind of work, who are like crazy and 24 hours a day, trying to figure out what does it do and what can we make it do. Then
you hang out with Zoom geeks, don't you?
I hang out with Zoom geeks.
Tell people about that.
I will. There's a group called Office Hours, which they've been producing 900 plus daily shows since March. And their Office Hours Global is where you can find them every single day, my time from 7 to 9 a.m. They produce this show that is 2 parts. The first part is answering questions that are just technical people throwing out technical questions. Many of them I understand, and actually most of them I have no idea what they're talking about. They have a panel of experts. And then the other is Zoom Test Kitchen, which is a Friday afternoon. They meet at 3 p.m. Eastern, and these guys are great. I love that group so much because this is how I find out about a lot of stuff. We go in, they drop the Zoom. And this is kind of, I think, important to kind of understand that it is complicated even for people who are invested in it 24 hours a day. So a couple weeks ago, Zoom dropped their here's our updates, here's our new release to the latest Zoom. We went in and went line by line to try to figure out what everything meant. And with everybody there kind of saying, well, this is my use case scenario, this is my experience. Even some of the things we couldn't figure out. We were like, what does that mean? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's try to break it. So I think the fact that there are people out there trying to break things and trying to figure out how to use it, that's what's helped me to become completely humbled to the fact that I know nothing. I used to be like, hey, I'm pretty cool in Zoom. I can create these cool events. And in fact, I can't create any of the cool events. Like I'm learning.
Oh, you have though. You really have. Give yourself a little credit. I mean, you found a way to make a very complicated. Speed date is a very complicated program. When we did it live, it was we had 11 tables with 11 producers, and then we had trailing producers who went around the circuit and met all the producers, and then writers on the inside of the circle going a different way, and so every writer met 11 producers and 11 trailing producers, and every trailing producer met the writers and the producers, and it was just chaotic. It's so noisy. People love the energy. I mean, John wants us to do it live again. I don't know if I will.
So speed date is one of the things that early next year, by next year, will benefit from Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC, because the one thing we cannot do so far is really do the trailing producers the way that we did in Zoom.
Well, let me explain that, because basically in the live event, the trailing producers went from station to station to station. They went around the circuit. For the way we do it now, for sanity's sake, and so that we don't have to do a speed date that takes a week, we have we assign each trailing producer or observing producer to one producer, and we'll make one move for the second circuit so that they meet 2 people. But
so we'll be able to fix that in the new year. That is one of the things that Zoom OSC will be able to fix for us.
But I got to tell you, a lot of people love being able to stay with one producer for the entire event. They learn so much, and they bond with the producer, and it's got its pluses. It's right. definitely has its pluses.
The other thing that, like a Zoom OSC, if we were to do it, it would tighten it up completely. We could add more writers. So what I could do differently with Zoom OSC that I can't do now, we have tightened it as quickly as we can. The way we've tightened it is we bring everybody back into the main room, we move the writers down one, and then we say we're going back. We actually could move people from room to room. So we could tighten things up or bring them in for less amount of time, just a little breather to catch up and then move them. So there's certain things that we can do if they were just on a Q lab or something that we would use. If it's Isadora might be the way to do it, which is basically a press of a button. Press of a button, everybody goes to their new room. It takes a little bit of programming that ahead of time. And that's one of the areas where we'd have a little bit more is a little problematic because of how late we get some of our things, because we're generous in ways to make sure that people, that we might have to be less generous, So, but those are the kinds of things that could speed up our own processes. That would be a room for growth, a room for improvement for us.
I just want to say to the room out there, we're like throwing a lot of information out very quickly. I can't imagine that everybody in the room understands everything that we're saying right now.
I don't understand everything.
Yeah, I mean, Tamra doesn't know. Yeah, so stop us and say, how does that work? How does this work?
I may not be able to answer that completely.
But at least we have a moment to actually think about what goes into what we're saying. One thing I wanted to ask you, we were talking really about programs. So we're talking about things that I need. I'm the executive director of TRU. I need certain programs. We had a room full of writers, people that are going to want to do their plays, do virtual readings of their plays. I think they all want to do live readings of their plays now, but for virtual readings of the plays, haven't you done some virtual readings with Write Act Rep or?
So we've done internal readings where we've had to. This is one of those things where whenever you want to do anything, you have to really weigh out what is the cost analysis and what are you going to get out of it, right? So there's lots of things that we can get out of doing readings in Zoom. One is that tape, to be able to hear it again, and from a writing standpoint, be able to really, to play it again to see if to use as a development device. We're currently right now in the process of looking at how do we, in our LA space, do simultaneous, if not live streams, then, released things afterwards. There's a group in Belfast who are doing this work. So, the people who are in these Zoom meetings that I hang out with are equal parts film technical people and theater people. So there's people all around the world who are doing this kind of work. So that we're getting ready to kind of start doing some 10-minute shows, 10-minute things to try out some of these bigger things that I'm talking about that I don't know how to use, right? So what can we do? And can I do it in a tiny way so that I can be more coherent and say, yes, for this tiny way, you can do it bigger. Because some of it does involve hardware, some of it does involve software, and having technical people who are willing to do it. I put a call out to my team and I'm like, anybody want to learn this software with me? Let's do it. Let's try to figure it out. So what you can do is probably endless. And some of what we have to do, just as we did when transferring a live event into a digital event, is to really look at all the pieces that are the most important and how do we present those pieces. We're still having a problem with accessibility in Zoom. That is something that is our number one, I think, from Zoom's point of view, but also for us. We want to make sure that our projects that we're doing online are accessible to hard of hearing and to, sight issues, for neurodiversion. And so a lot of that is being discussed right now at Zoom. And it's being discussed in groups, just like office hours and all around the place, what we can and can't do, what we're limited with. So that's, for me, a room for improvement that we should be focusing on, that all of us should be focusing on.
Well, the captioning is there. And actually, I've seen the captioning actually improve. Something happened in the past month.
It's not there in breakout rooms.
Oh, it's not there in breakout rooms. Yes, of course.
Physically not possible in a breakout room. So,
but in terms of doing a reading, what
right.
Somebody wants to do a reading, you can make it accessible to the hard of hearing by using the captioning, which is I have to ask you something. You may or may not know this. I wasn't able to access captioning for my Friday Zooms. Actually, Paul didn't ask me to put on the captioning. I think we're going to put it on. now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I just requested it for you.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is,
while he's checking that out, the software is much better, but there's certain things like I can tell you what we did to make the audition of this last audition event accessible for, hard of hearing actors that we had. We physically made videos of all of the breakout spaces that an actor would have to travel to, and we sent them to rev.com and had them captioned, and we sent them ahead of time to the actors who needed them. Because we knew that our event takes a lot of place in breakout rooms where she would not have access to that. So thinking through on all of our productions the same way we do in live spaces, how we're going to meet those needs is something that we all kind of have to be doing. For Speed Date, all of the producers, I want them to have visual, like we need to be able to see you. You need to have good lighting because we need to have good lighting. So all of
there's
those.
a question in the chat that's going to involve that as one of the answers. But the one of the things that I wanted to say is that the live captioning, the live transcription has gotten much better. A month or two ago, when I would read the transcription, I would go, I said that? What? You thought I said that?
And in the last Zoom drop, they did. Now they're starting it with Zoom at the most highest level. If you have a business account, which means you have 10 different licenses, it's $200 a month. None of us have that at the moment, but hopefully this will trickle down. They have now made it so that you can assign someone to be an ASL interpreter, and that will show up on screen
right.
All the time. That wasn't available to us before. You could assign someone in a room, but it wasn't actually part of an automatic screen that was just part of your system. So
well, I'm reading the transcription, and it's actually 90% accurate right now, and it didn't used to be this good.
Yeah. I'd love it to be in the breakout rooms. It's something that we all keep putting tickets in to see where they are in that. What I've been told is because they're different rooms, there's something about how the back end is encoded that they just haven't quite been able to figure out how to do that. What I could do is I can assign someone to be a transcription person and assign them to closed caption, but that can't close caption the entire breakout room. They could go to one breakout room and like it travels with that person. So there's some solutions that are happening. Those are areas that I would like to see us continue to be aware of and continue to really try to implement in all of our events, whether they're reading or, and as they become easier to do, then we should be doing them, so those are some of the areas that are room for improvement for us that are going to make things better.
I want to answer RK's. RK wants to know for table readings via Zoom, just the cast and creators, what tips do you have to make sure that they're technically successful? So basically, when you're talking about a table reader, we're talking about doing a reading in general. You're not getting into necessarily any need for breakout rooms, other than you may want to have your actors have a place to go if they're not on in a scene at the time. So do you want to take that? We can
I can talk a little bit about that because I think it's something we all kind of are. I think we came into Zoom really willing to be, no matter what happens, we're here for it because we wanted some live connectivity, and Zoom offered that to us. Zoom isn't going to go away, and so we all kind of have to think about our own digital setups, right? So you can improve your camera, you can improve your sound quality. I can show you the difference. It wouldn't take that long to show you the difference of what I sound like with this microphone, which is an inexpensive microphone. It's $100 microphone, versus what I sound like over just a regular, just my regular headset. It's dramatic. And I think that we all kind of have to be thinking in terms of, if you're going to be pitching in Zoom, if you're going to be doing a reading in Zoom where sound is important, then, the order of things are sound quality. Number one, hooking your computer up to your modem is important. Not using a cell phone or an iPad is important. You can, But as we get further and further down the line where we do have access to higher quality video, those right now, none of us do. I have 720 on my computer. Most people don't have that. So your Zoom meetings are sent out in about 360, which is not that high, right? So there's lots of different factors to that. So my order of operations is lighting. You should have lighting. No one should look like they can't be seen anymore, because it's so easy. And then the next would be sound and audio. And then after that would be camera.
So Arcade, I mean, the tough love answer is when you cast actors in a Zoom reading, you really have to make sure that they have the setup that can be successful in this medium. Not everybody has good lighting. You can help them with the right lighting. I know Tamra helps everybody with lighting. She has them move lamps in their apartment and flash things on the wall so that there's a reflection of the light from the wall onto the face. Not everybody has a ring light. Every actor should have a ring light.
I think every actor should not have a ring light, because ring lights are not the holy grail that we say that they are. And if you wear glasses, a ring light will not work for you. It will reflect in very weird ways off of your glasses. There are lots of things we can do lighting wise. It also depends on the needs of your Zoom reading. If you're doing a Zoom reading that's kind of closed, or that has some other people in, that you really are looking for script and to do some development work, that's very different, right? That's kind of this, if you think of that as when you invite people over to your house and they're sitting there in their living room, there's not a lot of production quality with that. But as you're getting further and further out, you do have to start thinking about those things. Some of the ways, like when I was at Disney, we started by sending out kits, and I know people now who are sending out kits. So it kind of depends on, again, what your budget is, who your actors are. But it wouldn't be that out of the way to put together a small kit that includes lighting and sound and all of those things. A Shure SM7V is a microphone that can be XLR, like the one I have now, or it can be USB, and it's like $300, right? If I were to tell an actor what kind of webcam to upgrade to, we all upgraded to kind of the Logitech, and they're fine, but they're limited. But you can go all the way up to a DSLR camera for $2,000. That is beautiful, looks amazing, but you have to know how to use this equipment. So I can tell you, I'm a tech person. I invested hard because I had a little bit of extra money during the beginning of the pandemic. I did a lot of research. I bought all the things that I thought I might need. And I have good equipment. I'm only just starting to use it. Like this microphone, I'm only just starting to use. So I think part of it is, we had feedback afterwards. Well, the actors should be on lighting and they should have this. They should, but they don't. And it is an investment. It's an expensive investment. So, there's a range, but if you're going to get an XLR microphone, for example, like this one, this cannot plug into my computer without plugging into some kind of interface. And I have a little tiny interface that's, $80, and I have what I have it in right now, a Rodecaster Pro, which was $600. So there's a wide range as to how to do that technical work, and not everybody can, nor should they, nor do they want to. So anything is possible with time, money, and it just like anything else. But I do think this isn't going to go away. If you're going to be in things where you're pitching your work to someone, where you're, I'd go to pitch things, and that was one of the things I fixed. The very first thing I fixed was not sound. It was literally lighting, because I know I'm going to be in meetings with people, and I need them to be able to not be wondering about me. And so that's where I would tell people to start with lighting, start with sound. Those are the two things. If you can be heard, fantastic. If you can be seen, fantastic.
Kate Catcher says she's never seen a reading via Zoom that was pleasing. I can't say the same thing. I can say that they're harder to be effective on Zoom, but there are things that you can do. I think that if you have a certain understanding of how this all works. And if you understand that when people come into a Zoom room, they come in the order in which their camera comes on. So they go from the upper left to the next, to the right, to the right, to the right. So you can sort of plan to have your actors come in a certain sequence, and you can tell your actor as a director, you can tell them, you should be facing this way and you should be facing that way, so it looks like you're actually talking to each other. There are readings where people just like talk straight out into the audience, and there's some scenarios where that really works well, because there's an intimacy in Zoom that you don't necessarily have even in live theater. Being able to see the face full front and close up, you can do some things emotionally. The actors can do things facially that communicate a lot. But that's not always what you want to see. I don't want to watch talking heads in frames particularly. I'm not into that as much. What?
If we're going to do that, then there are things we can do, right? Framing everybody so that they look the same. That would change. There's tiny things you can do.
Framing people so the proportionately they're the same. But also there's virtual backgrounds which has mixed. It can have mixed success. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it's.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's never annoying, but it doesn't always work as well as you hope it will. I know people that have done virtual backgrounds, and they've actually planned it. The whole thing is you have to think in film terms.
Right.
When you're doing anything on Zoom, you have to think in film terms, not necessarily theater terms. So you have to set up your shots. I've seen people use virtual backgrounds so that one person had one part of the virtual background, another person had another part of the virtual background. So the two parts came together and it looked like a full room. You can also, if you record things and then edit them in post-production, you can put people in the same environment and create virtual backgrounds. There's all sorts of things you can do, Kate. There really are. There's
a couple things. One, with Zoom OSC, Isadora, and Zoom ISO, all of those things could be planned ahead of time and be at the push of a button on like a QLab or something, or Isadora, that would move those cues along. I have not seen those kind of things. I know they're possible. The question becomes like, is it worth it and what do you get? I think the other piece of it is that where Zoom has been successful is when we have taken the best of Zoom and we've taken a live event and adapted it to the best of Zoom. So in fact, there are things, I know John and other people want like the speed date to be live, but there are things about it being in Zoom that actually are beneficial to the writers. They are on a one-on-one, very close conversation with people. It's much more intimate. That actually that's a plus, but it's also using Zoom for its best, what Zoom does best. So some of what I would like to see too is not just the thought of how do I make a Zoom reading work in a digital space, but also how do I program and plan for what Zoom does best. And that's really, so that it is something not theater and not film, it is something different. And I think that's where there's an opportunity for growth for all of us, is to be thinking about, does this medium offer something that the other mediums do not? And it does. It offers a lot of things. So that's where I think we're going to see Zoom kind of change. I think people are going to go back into live events for what they do. Hybrid, we're seeing, is not quite working. It serves too many masters. But I think that there are ways to do all of the things that you've talked about and make it a much more pleasing experience for the user. And I think that that's also for us, in my room for improvement list from even the audition event. The one thing that we've managed to do is bring actors in front of the producers and casting directors, but it's not as pleasant of an experience as it is when we're sitting there live. But there's some things that we can do to make that a better experience. So, those are the areas where for me, I'm like, how do I make my experience as a casting director a better experience? How do I get to talk to my colleagues without it being something that the actor has to worry about? There's ways of doing that. I can bring the actor in from an outside device and bring them in a different way. They will never see the chat. That means we can open up the chat and the conversations for our groups. Little things like adding a countdown timer when we go to a break, so people can know I can leave to go to the bathroom and I can come back and I know that there's a 5-minute break. So there's certain things that we can do to make the experience better for the audience, which we've not really tapped into, because in the beginning we're all just like, this is what we have, let's go. And so those are the areas that we're kind of thinking through now. Like, how do we make that a better experience? We did that with the speed date. With speed date, one of the things that as producers we missed was getting to hang out with each other afterwards. Well, we've built that in. We kick everybody out and we hang out for about 45 minutes. And we have that intimate time that we get to talk about what we saw, meet each other again, hang out like we did before. So other than the fact that we don't get food, like
I'll email you a burger.
Right. We've been adjusting to some of the best things. And, for me personally, Zoom has been fantastic. I was trapped in Los Angeles and I have incredible friendships that I've made with people in TRU, with people around the world. I get to work with writers from all over the place. So I just think that there are things that Zoom does really well that is not going to go away, because our world is now opened up. And so as we're kind of seeing what we can do and how we can push the boundaries, we have to kind of stop thinking about how do we replace what we had and how do we create the new thing and take advantage of what this medium has to offer to us. And it does have a lot to offer to us. I mean, this thing that you do, this gathering that we do, every week is hugely changed our lives. It's connected people in ways that we just were not connected in before when we were doing gatherings live. That doesn't preclude them from being live, but it definitely has things that some things are offered and some things are lost.
I'm a convert. I mean,
I
never wanted to do Zoom. 27 years, I guess, of doing TRU. The thing that I thought was kind of special about it was the sense that we had in the room. And I'm a Pisces, so I actually read rooms, and I just thought, how can I read a room in Zoom? I just didn't know how it would be intimate and yet somehow or other I bring you people, everybody together, and there is a sense of community. I'm amazed that it works. I'm just amazed that it works, and I'm not going to stop doing it. The other thing I want to give another answer to RK's question, and then I want to go to the other streaming.
Yeah, I'd love to give that answer a question too.
Yeah, I think the key to successful Zoom readings, and Tamra, you can disagree with this, but I think it's your director. I think it's a director who can think in visual terms, who can think in terms of the frames, they can think in terms of where to place people, and plan things ahead so that it's not just arbitrary, that things actually are happening. People are looking at each other when you want them to look at each other. I was saying before that having an entire reading where everybody's just looking at you and looking out at you and talking to you out like this, it doesn't work for me. I like to be fooled into thinking people are talking to each other.
It's a different style of directing, though, isn't it? So there's a couple of things. One, people don't know what's possible, and so they don't know how to adjust to those things. So also, I think if you are going to become more technical, you have to have a technical director or technical producer on your team who can really do that work, and understanding that that just like a film, you would have a DP who has a lot of creative say, that you find a team that you can trust for them to be making those creative decisions with the technical elements that we have. Because I think that's kind of the next step. Right now, we've been kind of doing things, hey, I've got a light, let's put on a show, like just, down and dirty. So if we do want to take it to a different level, then we have to understand that includes a different kind of tech. It includes a board operator who can program that software, just like you have a light board operator or a visual effects operator. It does increase your crew. And, to do things like sound, for example, we all come onto this with down and dirty sound, but you can have a sound mixer as one of your team who goes and mixes everyone's sound, right? So that everything sounds the same. And that means that, same with video framing, like where are you putting people, like where are they going to sit in their frame? Those are all things that you can do, but it does increase your tech time. It increases your budget. It increases, there are ways to do all of these things, but they include software and hardware and technical knowledge and all of those things. So is it possible? Yes. But then it becomes, this is why I keep telling everybody, when people were coming to me early in the thing, they're like, I want to do a Zoom reading. I'm like, great, here's what the budget would cost. And they were like, what are you talking about? That's so expensive. That's what it would cost. Because if you hire actors and they're $125 a day or whatever their fee is, it's going to cost that. So anything is possible in Zoom. You have to just figure out what is going to serve your needs and the needs of your community and your audience. That's why, even though I know that there are ways that we could instantly up our game in any of our events, I'm very slow to implement them because I want to make sure that it's something that everybody knowing, I happen to know a lot of this communities, what they're logging in on as an audience, because I've met with most of them one-on-one for one of our events to see what is their home office setup? What does it look like? So all of those things matter. And we have to kind of to also keep in mind of what is important to TRU. It's important to us for the audition event, for example, that everybody who wants to participate can participate. And we spend a week where I go into everyone's bedroom and living room and try to make their space look and sound the best that it can. And some of it works and some of it doesn't.
And I have to also say that there will be compromises along the way. We ideally wanted everybody to audition like almost full figure, but basically we wanted them from at least the waist up. But right. Not everybody was set up in their space, right, so that they could be seen that much. And then I have people who saw the audition. I have a couple people, one who's in the room, who said that she just didn't like the fact that nobody was moving. She didn't see, right, any movement, and she didn't see any hand gestures like this. And we adjust as best as we can to all of these limitations. We don't pretend that the limitations aren't there, but we do think that the actors were able to show themselves to pretty good advantage in most cases, given the limitations. I think one or two of them actually were set up so that you could see them full, right, not full body, but nearly full body, 3/4 maybe.
And some of that might be in creating our own studio where people could come in and audition and we could have things set up. There's a new camera out, the Link 360, that's pretty amazing, that follows you around, that has fairly good audio, but probably not 100% what it would be. What would be the best thing. So I'm curious to see how that would work with an actor. Does that change things a little bit? I think it would. So I think that there's a lot of new technology that's coming out, and how do we use that technology in what we want to do is, to me, very exciting. That's why I hang out with these crazy people, because I just really do think that there's more. And I think that in some respects, we've gotten a little complacent into what we accept as okay. And we've gotten a little angry about what we don't accept as okay. But it's more complicated than any of that. But there's a lot of things that are possible. And I think it's really exciting time to be doing any of this kind of work, because we're able to have a bigger reach than we've ever had before. We're able to really, get to see and do things. Auditioning is not going to change. It's going to be in Zoom. So we do have to work and figure out what do actors need what would be the best investment for them, to really up their game. What does that look like? Because you can invest very little money, or you can invest a lot of money. And what does that look like at all of the levels? And where should people's, I made a list and I started checking off little by little. Okay, I'll pick this up. Okay, I'll do this. But there's a number of things that we can do, and it's constantly changing. And, and that's very exciting. It's, for those of us who were around in the mid 90s and kind of looking at the internet going from, a clickable thing where we couldn't even imagine. I mean, I worked at TV Guide in 1995. In January of 1995, we didn't get the internet until we saw it like we know it now, where you click on something and go somewhere else, until April of 1994. So at that point, I would be in TV Guide. I'm like, it'd be really cool. It'd be really cool if we could watch a movie together or watch a TV show and be able to comment. And everybody Tamra, that'd be super cool, but we can't do that. We can all do that now. We hold it in we have it in our purse, in our pocket. We have a little computer that goes with us everywhere. And so this is another of those times where the world is changing. We have what it looks like now is not what it's going to look like 6 months from now. And all of the things we can do are really our imagination is kind of what we're able to do.
Before we wrap up, I want to actually touch on the platforms. Wasn't it you who told me that there is a new platform out that actually has almost or just about solved the latency lag problem with music?
So there's I'll have to send it because I don't have it off the top of my head. There are lots of things. There's 2 questions. One is that question is, can we sing together? There are lots of different people and apps that have been trying to do it. We can do it with certain things, like if everybody's on a stream bridge or they're within 400 miles of each other. You can't be 3,000 miles away. Otherwise, there's weird latency things. It's getting closer. There are some things that are like, I saw a demonstration, and it's escaping me at the moment. And it's, but I saw a demonstration where 4 people were playing music. They're playing jazz music together, and they were even able to hand off from one to the other.
You told me about this, and you actually had the name of the platform at the time.
Yeah, I have to look it up. Actually,
if anybody in the room knows
I can look it up. Hold on, I have it on my thing.
Greg specifically asked about StreamYard. StreamYard used to be a little bit better than Zoom in many ways. The limitation on StreamYard was that you couldn't have more than a certain number of frames on camera. I think it was like 10. I think.
So let's talk a little bit about StreamYard, OBS, WebEx. OBS can actually be used in Zoom.
Right.
So you can integrate OBS with Zoom. In terms of platforms, a lot of platforms out there are built on the Zoom SDK. They're actually built on top of Zoom because there isn't anything in standalone in terms of streaming that equals what has been done with Zoom. That may not be the case forever, but the truth of the matter is, like, it's the best platform, and what you can do with it is pretty crazy. You can things like OBS, or if you're on a Mac and you use something like Ecamm, Ecamm makes everything just much easier to manipulate and to use. But there's a difference, like the differences are between software and hardware. So I have hardware. I have an ATEM Mini, which is a pretty inexpensive switcher, which means I can switch 4 cameras. Like if we were to do a live thing, Bob, where we had 4 cameras on people, we could actually switch them live using that. I can also integrate that switcher into Zoom. So there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of OBS. OBS is the down and dirty and cheap way of organizing your show, right? So you can put scenes in, you can do all of those things. Same with I just saw a thing that Isadora is going to be doing something called IzzyCast. I don't know enough about it. I'm sure it will be more will come out, later. Again, there are inexpensive ways, like you do have to pay for Ecamm, but if that's something that is, the people I know who use it it's amazing. But you have to remember all of this software has to have hardware that can handle it. So, if you've got a Mac M1 anything, then you can, I wouldn't use like an Ecamm with a MacBook Air. But like if you have a MacBook Pro, it's definitely doable. So some of it is, I think Zoom is a pretty robust system. It can build out depending on what your hardware is and depending on what software you're using. So all of them are good. I probably would stick with Zoom just because in terms of what they're capable of and all of the different options that they have, if you have them, as things become more available to like the rest of us, right? So right now, if you have a pro, not a pro account, I have multiple pro accounts. If I had 10 pro accounts and I could have a business account, then I could project in 4K. So like we have the option, we have the ability to do things. It's about money and time. And so any of that's possible. The question is, when are some of those cool things going to trickle down to like the rest of us who are really looking at using Zoom in a different way? But I would say, like I said, in about 6 months to a year, the quality of broadcast capability for Zoom is going to outshine what is currently broadcast quality in the traditional media. So, and when you're talking about OBS and you're talking about Ecamm, those are just ways of using this cloud-based software.
Well, that's a mouthful.
Sorry.
So it's now 6:40. So I'm going to just thank you for coming today and talking to everybody. If anybody's still pondering anything that we've talked about, and you really want to just clarify anything, turn your mic on and just talk to us. It's come into the room. It's fine. Or use the hand raise so I know that you want to actually say something. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up. Let's see, I don't see anything happening here. So I'm going to wind this up and just say thank you, Tamra, for being with us today. And I'm going to do my wind up to the YouTube and podcast viewers out there. And thank you for being with us today. Again, if you want to join us in the room on Fridays at 5 o'clock Eastern time, just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com, and I'd be happy to invite you here every week. And you don't have to come every week, but you can come whatever weeks you want to. We're going to be doing this. I'm not going to give up my virtual community. I'm not going to give up the opportunity of having Emma and Michael here from Australia and people from San Francisco and all over the country. So I love this. Never thought I would, but I do love it now. We do this as a public service. Here comes the pitch. We ask you to pay what you can. If you're not a member of TRU, we suggest that maybe you join TRU as a member, or pay what you can when you come and join us. Pay what you can be nothing. It can be free, but it also can be $7, or it can be $15, or it can be whatever you can afford. Now that we're going into the live world, I keep saying we're going into the live world. I haven't done the live program yet, but I'm planning on it. And it means that we're going to start having all sorts of venue costs and additional costs. Running through live costs a lot more money than it does running us virtually, as it turns out. So as we head into live performance in the live world, keep supporting us. I appreciate that very much. And join us next week and the week after. I've got somebody interesting coming every week, I promise you. So that's it. Thanks, everyone.